This podcast has been brought to you by Voyager's World. We are building the most amazing hospitality network.
All right, Amber. Thank you. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Yeah.
We were hashing, and it is noticeable that I have been doing a lot of podcasts with hashers.
I can imagine.
Yeah. To the point that people that care to watch probably already know what a hasher is, which is this drinking club with a running problem.
Yes.
We drink beer and run a little bit. But what happens is that after the runs, usually we go to a bar or we talk or we have conversations during the stops where we drink beer. And I noticed one day you talking about a trip that you did, and just listening to the conversation, I thought she must have some good stories, because it gave me the impression that you traveled a lot and you had a very cool experience. And I thought I need to do a podcast.
Okay.
I appreciate the trust and coming over.
Sure thing.
Yeah. So please give us a 1 minute elevator speech of your story. What did you do?
My travel story?
Yeah. That was from birth. Everything about you.
1 minute.
Everything about you.
No, as far as traveling, I spent most of the last year outside of the country, about 5 months in South America and 2 to 3 in Europe. I've also lived abroad one other time. I lived in Italy for 11 months, about 7 years ago. So I think I've been to maybe 20 or so countries in my adult life, and I'm 33. So it's a pretty good number for my age.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. Yeah. So Italy first.
Yeah, I moved to Italy as an au pair.
Okay.
You know what it is?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, I hosted several people that came to US to be au pair. Surprisingly, most of them were girls, of course, but I hosted a male au pair once. Yeah, that because I thought there must be guys doing this too, but they are rare. They're very rare.
Yeah, I think families probably have a little more of safety concerns bringing a male into their home, which I have my own opinions about. But
I don't know, or maybe he was an au pair for a boy. Which would make sense. I guess.
The family that I worked for, they had a male before me, actually, a male from Germany. So they would change genders and change backgrounds of where they were getting their au pairs from. So they had a German male before me and a French female before me, another American female after me.
So it's like the kids are traveling all the time without even leaving home.
Yeah, exactly. And my family, at least, I can only speak for them, but they wanted to bring different ages, different genders, different nationalities into their homes, so the kids learned that everyone isn't the same. And they had to learn to adapt to people's different personalities, their different languages, their different backgrounds, their different way of communicating. Even if they could speak the language, we all still communicate differently. So they wanted that broad spectrum for their kids, which I thought was really neat.
I don't know where I remember this from, but once I heard an argument that when the parents are not raising the kids themselves, when it's not them hovering over the kids all the time, but it's someone else raising the kids, they are getting a non-optimal situation, that it's better if the parents are there. But of course, when you look at things in reality, it's more nuanced than that. And I think that maybe by having a series of au pair, but the parents still being there, they're not going to be absent. No. But by having a series of au pair, you're actually adding to the way you're raising the kids. You're making more rich.
Yes. By
adding some cool, interesting diversity. Diversity is a word that I cringe about. I don't like to use it too much because it's misused. But it is some diversity, that you're bringing people from different countries. They are all well educated, though. They are in that way they are similar. Right. You're trying to bring them from certain similar parameters. They're all coming from the same company, and it's out through the same system, but they will be different. And I was raised with having visitors occasionally. We didn't have. I was actually raised by a lady that lived in the house with us, and she would do the cooking, and she was like the maid, the cook. She took care of the house and everything. Yeah, but it was always the same lady. Right? But we had guests from time to time, and usually from Europe or US or Canada. So I always saw these people that they had lives that were so different, and I think that very few things made me dream more than that.
Yeah.
I remember one specific case of a professor that came to visit us, and he was from somewhere in the US, and he was like extraordinarily young for a professor with a PhD and all that. And I remember my mother mentioning that he has been to like 25 countries already, and he used to backpack playing guitar and doing something like that. This is in the 70s. Okay, this is before internet.
Right.
When you would participate on a society for travelers, like I don't even remember the names, but I know that there were some that you would become a member and they would send you a book with the contact information for people all over the world. So you had that book. Yeah, it used to be like that. So he had that kind of thing, and I thought at that time that he was the most fascinating person I knew, and none of it was because he was a professor. I was completely indifferent to his background in education at that time. But the fact that he traveled so much made me imagine that it's. I don't think he would be more impressed if someone from Mars landed the spacecraft in front of the house and walked in. It was amazing, and I didn't have the travel bug until much later, because to me that was something that I dreamed of, but not in the sense of that I want to do it. I kind of just wanted to talk to them, but and I wanted to fly, because when I was very little, my father had an airplane for a while, and so I some of my earliest memories from when I was 4 or 5. That's around where we get the first memories. Some of those memories are being in an airplane, and like a 5-seater, 6-seater, not big. But I have these very early memories of flying, and then later when I was 14 or so, I did a lot of flying again, and but commercial, and then when I was 20, 21, I went to Amazonia with my father, and we flew all over the place. We flew all around and then visit different cities in Amazonia, places that I would never occur to me to go to, and on that one I was already tall enough and old enough that it would make sense, and they put me on the co-pilot seat all the time, and I had a lot of, I wouldn't say training, it's not training in the formal sense that I got trained to fly an airplane. But the pilot was always telling me, "Oh, this does this, and this is why I do this." He would be explaining stuff, and occasionally he would let me, play with it a little. Maneuver. He would say, "Okay, now we need to do this thing," and he would explain how and let me do it. And he would be watching, and I would be adjusting course. And doing
he's
things
ready
like
to
that.
help.
Yeah, he's watching, but and I did one takeoff once.
Cool.
Because after many takeoffs, I knew the sequence so well and I knew the parameters. He explained to me all the critical speeds, and I didn't know at that time how you calculate those speeds, but I knew that, okay, this is the number. I had the page in front of me, and then he would, you know, tell me, okay, we got V1, and then you know what it means, you know.
That's so
and
cool.
Then, okay, now rotate, and I knew that was the time to start, you know, pulling the yoke, and so all this gave me this thing about flying.
So did you keep learning?
No, not at that time. But then flying was always so natural to me. I never got sick, no matter how much turbulence. And later it helped me when sailing, because I went sailing many times, sometimes in really bad weather, and I never got seasick. And so apparently I have a stomach of steel. So it's no fear, no seasickness, and also it always felt very natural to me, to the point that it became a symbol of my of my emancipation. When you are a kid, you may be traveling sometimes, but someone sent you there. Right? Your parents bought the ticket. They say, okay, we're going to send you to school in this place, and there you go. Or maybe you are working and the company arranges the travel for you. Okay, you're going to that conference right now, and you have everything. Someone in a department that you never saw. It's like the mail department, right?
Right.
Someone arranged everything for you. But I remember that once I went to, a long time ago, I went to, I think it was São Paulo, in one of my trips there, one of my first trips to São Paulo, and it was one that I decided to do, and I bought the ticket. So when I got on board, and we were preparing to fly, I thought, nobody sent me here. I'm here because I want to, and I paid for the ticket. And that day, that moment, I felt so adult. It was like a rite of passage for me. And every time that I fly, I say that. Now,
I can recognize that feeling.
I say that, okay, I decide to be here. It's on me now. And nobody paid for it. And the feeling is fantastic. It brings a little bit of anxiety as well, but the feeling is
exciting though.
It is. It's like, okay, now I am the driver on this. You know, not on the airplane, but I'm the driver on my life. You know, I feel like, okay, now I am in the driver's seat, and instead of being a passenger on it. And then but in recent years, it changed the way I think about travel experience. Like I did a lot of traveling in Europe as well, but I did upwards of 95% of it riding my own motorcycle. So because I wanted to be the driver of the experience. I didn't want to be sitting as the passenger, and definitely never as a tourist on a tourist bus or on a, you know, that to me is like
I agree.
It is boring as fuck. But so I don't do that. But I wanted to be driving the experience, and that's why I went through the extra cost and complications of bringing my motorcycle there, and it was worth every cent.
You brought it from here?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a you saw the motorcycle I have here, right?
Yeah,
same model, just different color. So I had the motorcycle here, and I took it to Europe because I wanted to ride my motorcycle with the American license plate on it.
Gotcha.
And it is one of the best decisions I took.
Yeah?
Yes, because when you travel in a different continent with your own license plate, everybody notices. You know, because when they see a motorcycle that is unusual there, okay, they will notice that. But the next thing they look at is the license plate. It's like when I mentioned to you that I'm building a boat, right? What was your first question after that?
I think I asked you when it will be finished.
Yeah, how long it will take? That is always the next question. Everybody asks that question next.
Oh yeah,
okay?
how long are you traveling
Because it's
for?
very natural. It's a very natural question to ask next. It's like when you go to a party and you meet people, like a cocktail party, let's say, or some kind of a casual thing. What is the second or third question that people ask after they learn your name?
What do you do?
What do you do for a
living?
living?
I avoid asking.
Exactly. That is a very interesting conversation too. I want to talk to you about that. So it's a very natural question to ask. How long it's going to take, and I'm very vague about it. Very vague for a very specific reason. I don't know.
Right.
So
till it's finished.
Until it's finished. So I don't bring it up, but. On the traveling, when you're when you're riding your own motorcycle or an exotic car. By the way, when I got the motorcycle from a company that does the delivery there, they had this warehouse full of vehicles that all arrived from America that week. I never saw so many classic muscle cars from America. In the same place, not even in America. Someone mentioned that it was like a few days before a very popular car show in Netherlands, and that warehouse was full of Mustangs and Camaros and Corvettes and all kinds of American.
Right.
Cars, all with their most of them with American license plates.
Interesting.
But they were being brought to, and a lot of Harley Davidsons too. And then my bike there. And the benefit was this: it started so many conversations. To the point that I learned to, when I was riding, I was on the road and I would see a bar or a restaurant and there were a bunch of motorcycles in front of it. I would not stop anymore. I would keep going because they're there having lunch and they see you. Okay, they see a motorcycle that is unusual, and then I would keep going, and then I would turn around, and then I would come back. I would come back and park back first. And now they see the license plate. So they saw me passing, they saw me coming back, and then they see the license plate. By the time I got inside the bar, they are already bringing me a beer. It was incredible how many friends I did just by parking right. Right? They want to hear a story.
I mean, I could relate just with like the backpack that I was traveling with in South America. It's an Osprey brand. And I guess that's pretty typical of Americans to have. So just like I would walk into a bar or a hostel, and because of the gear I had, automatically people would know that I was not from there, because it's not a common brand to get there. And so the same idea, like want to talk to you because you're someone different. So I can only imagine like being on your bike.
And we are so ethnically diverse that just by your looks people would not immediately say American. But maybe by the way you dress, they would. But just by looking at you, only someone could presume, maybe Italian, maybe French, maybe English, But when they see the backpack and the way you dress, they may. Have you, on your travels, did you start noticing where people are from by the way they move, or without hearing them? Like I can tell from a distance if someone is American in a restaurant sometimes.
I can tell if someone's American pretty easily, but I didn't find a good pattern in being able to like tell other cultures.
Start observing that when you go to restaurants here that are full of South Americans, and when you go to a place that has Americans, notice the way that they hold the fork. When they cut the meat, they switch.
That's true.
It's
I can pick out Italian or Brazilian by the way they eat, for sure.
Yeah, it's like that movie, Glorious Bastards. Remember that scene on the bar?
I don't know if I've seen it.
You never seen that movie? Let me turn the cameras off. You get back home and you watch this thing.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
No. My God. Okay.
What is this?
They didn't have TV in jail. What happened to you?
I actually haven't had a television in like 13 years.
That is yeah, but I have a computer, right?
I just got one.
Yeah?
Like 2 years ago. I didn't have for 6 years before that.
Wow. Wow.
I'm a little off the grid.
There was a very poor tribe you came from. All right. So
just minimalistic.
Okay. There is a scene in which they are in a bar and they are pretending to be Germans, and there are some German officers. And I'm not going to tell the entire thing because I don't want to spoil the movie, but this detail. And the guy, a German, just realized that they were actually not German because he ordered a whiskey, and then the English spy, he said, yes, 3 whiskeys. And he did like this. And the German said, if you were a German, you would say 3 whiskeys.
Right.
You know. In fact, I noticed that Brazilians do like this. But when they are counting, often they start like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But if they're going to just say 3,
Americans do 1, 2, 3. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Like this.
Germans do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In India, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Really?
Yeah.
All the same hand?
Yeah, they do like this. Like in Bulgaria, when they are agreeing, they do like this. They say yes or no.
I never knew that either.
It's confusing as fuck. I have friends there. I spent like a year. No, total, I think I spent like 6 months in Bulgaria, so I have a lot of friends there. And it is confusing as fuck. You're looking at them and they agree with you and they say, yeah, I have been there too.
And you're like...
And you go like, okay.
I just learned, I was at a conference this past weekend in Nashville, and the company that I work for, we're expanding into Japan next year. So we were taking a course, not a course, but listening to a speech on some of the cultural norms that we'll need to be aware of as we start doing business with Japan. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is the way they exchange business cards. That always 2 hands, always 2 hands. Always you bow. You always present the card with the words facing towards the person you're handing it to, so it would be like, readable to them right away. The more senior person gives their card first, backs down, like steps back.
Did they tell you what it means if they don't take the card?
I'm sure that's not good.
That's horrible. So that means like you are
totally
cheaper
rejected.
than dirt to them. You're like,
interesting.
It will be the ultimate insult in that situation is not taking it. We later off camera I'll tell you some things I know about working with Japanese because I used to work with them, not in Japan, but in a little settlement where it was only Japanese living there. So it was like a little it was like traveling in time, in space and time, because not just you were traveling in space and suddenly, now you are in a Japanese village. But also it was like traveling in time because they came, that was in southern Brazil, and they came to that region during the 50s. So it diverged from Japan culturally. It's like as Japan keeps changing culturally in certain things, especially the young people in that village, it was frozen in time. So it was like all their customs and all the way they did things and the social interaction was 1950s Japan. So it's super classic. You know, like
sounds really interesting.
Yeah, like they would go to the grocery store. The couple would go, and on the way and walking both ways, the man would walk in front of the woman. She would walk like 3 or 4 steps behind him, and she would carry all the groceries. You know, and he just chooses some things. She chooses most of the stuff, you know, and she has the money to pay for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, like he gets his money. And she does all the money management in the house. So he'll give her all the money. He doesn't have money to buy cigarettes. You know, for every
literally gives
purchase,
her all the money.
She has to give specific money for that. So say, I need cigarettes, and then she would give exactly the money for that.
She's like the bank account.
Yeah, it was like really, you may not see that so much in Japan anymore if you visit younger people.
Right.
You know. And several other things. And when friends of mine told me about their upcoming trips to Japan, I would explain some things like that. Like one of my friends, she is from California, and her husband was in Japan doing some construction there, and she was going to go to help just the last 2 weeks. And I told her, when you arrive in the airport, he will be there to greet you, and probably there will be 2 or 3 guys from the company there, because it's very normal. And they may bring flowers or anything like that, right? And they are going to greet you, and they'll give you a card and all that stuff. I said, but don't make the mistake of giving your luggage to him, because if he pulls your luggage now, it looks really bad, you know. So you have to pull all your luggage, you know, and he will just you may walk beside him because they understand you are foreigner, right. But if you give him your luggage, it's like you're making him your employee now, you know, and right in front of them, right on the first interaction, that will not look good. So, and I said, and don't bring your Western values too hard. You know, yeah, of course you are aware of those things, but don't take it hard. For instance, don't take it hard the fact that when they finish the work, it was a construction of a store in a mall. So when they finish, there will be a party, an inauguration party, and they are not going to invite you. And if he brings you, nobody's going to complain or look at it weird. But you are just not going to get an invitation card because they presume that you are not going.
Interesting.
You know, they will invite him, of course.
Yeah, because he's been there working on it.
He was the manager of the thing, but they are just not going to invite you. It's like they will forget, because they always forget to invite the wives. And
interesting.
And also, she said that she was going to do some work with them. And I said, okay, but in what is your capacity there? Oh, I'll be his assistant. So, okay, so engineering, so you're going to be telling Japanese men what to do. She said, yeah, occasionally I'll tell them, okay, what do you need to move? I work more in logistics. I said, all right, so here's how it's going to happen, probably. Right. Later she confirmed, you're going to talk to a Japanese man and you're going to tell him what to do, what is the task, and he's going to say yes. And then he's not going to do it. He's going to totally not do it. And then you come back and say, you have to do this. I say, yes. And then he's totally not going to do it.
Yeah, they don't say no.
No,
right?
But he's going to say yes, because they have a lot of trouble saying no. It's very difficult to extract a no from them.
I experienced that
negative,
in Thailand.
Very difficult. But then the third time you come over to him and you basically yell at him. You go crazy gaijin and you go like, you have to get it done now, and then you make a scandal right in front of his co-workers. From now on, he'll be able to do everything you say, because now he can say I will do it so she doesn't make a scandal. You know, that he doesn't even need to say those words, but the others will understand, okay, he is following a woman, but because he's trying to avoid a scandal.
They like to keep the harmony is the phrase that they use in our training.
That is a social, it's a richness of social rules and interactions that is unusual to us, very unusual. But it is there. It is in place. Other countries in Asia also have some of it, but I think that it probably, my friends that go to a lot of Asian countries, they say, no, in Japan it's a little more sharp. You know, it's a little more visible than in other countries. And don't get the impression that Japanese women are not assertive or that they are not independent or anything like that, but it expresses itself in different ways. Not on that way. Unless you're very young, and then you're very westernized. You know? It's like in many countries. Right. But so I told her that, and she told me, they didn't invite me, and I had to yell at people, and also going back home after work, I said, walking from the mall to the hotel, it was like a short walk. I said, it's as safe as walking through the police station. There is no danger at all. But the moment they see that you're going, 1 or 2 employees are going to follow you. They're not going to talk to you or anything. They're just going to walk behind you all the way to the hotel. And when you cross the door, they will walk back because it's the way, the tradition. It's like they are escorting you back to your hotel. Nobody's going to go to your hotel to walk behind you as you're going to work. That never happens. But they'll always walk back.
Interesting.
And she said that very often it happened. That they will follow her and then walk back. Yeah. Yeah, that is a lot of very, very funny, interesting things. I'm planning to go to Japan to visit some friends there.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing that I want to see, because I read about it and I couldn't confirm very well. Like I got some friends saying me, no, that doesn't exist anymore. And one of my friends there, she's a crazy bitch. She said, oh no, we'll find it. We'll find it for sure. And she will know who she is when she watches this podcast. So she said, we'll find it. The story is this. It used to be very common for the girls to be groped on the bus or on the train. Like men would just grope them. And it was like, the camera's okay. It was like everywhere. You know, the girls would get groped. and it was it's a weird country, right? They're very restrained in some ways and then very weird and in other ways. But then it became such an embarrassment because foreigners are visiting and then they get groped and then they react and then there is a scandal and then all hell breaks loose. Or foreigners would go to study there. And they would put their ski uniform and all that, and then go to school, and then, oh my God, you know, something happens. So it became such an embarrassment that during the 80s, the government started making campaigns asking people to stop doing it. You know, that like it's not cool anymore.
Times are changing.
And at some point, they created laws to like fines. You know, so it's not that the fine is big, but imagine the embarrassment for a guy to get fined for groping, you know, it's something like that. And then they created also the backlash that sometimes girls accuse the guys of doing that unless they give them money, you know. So it created all kinds of...
We deal with similar issues even here.
Exactly. But it was a major thing, you know. The groping on the train was a major thing in Japan, but then that isn't anymore, or at least not common. So I read about this club that it's like one of these kind of kinky clubs that you go to a it's like a nightclub but a basement, like an underground thing, and inside they have a train car with the sound effects and the vibration and everything, and there are girls there. It's like a strip club but in the shape of a train car. And then the guys pay and they go there and they can grope them. And and I thought, this is another planet. I want to visit this.
Yeah.
This
so
is
bizarre.
not planet Earth. I want to visit that culture to see those things that are going to shock me the most, because that is where it gets interesting.
Can you imagine walking into that club having not had that backstory?
Without knowing why
like,
it is there. Yeah, exactly. No, like they have, and this one I saw in videos or in magazines, they have clubs like bars where the servers, all girls in the variations of kimono or whatever, that they talk to the guy. Only guys go there mostly. They talk to the guys, calling them like my master and sir and oh, you're the king, you know, like really treating them like royalty. And they walk in and they are talked to and attended to as if they were royalty. And then they're having their meal and their drinks, and they're being served everything, you know, and that must be expensive as fuck. And that's it. That's what the restaurant is, or the bar is. Like,
so nothing sexual, just like that interaction.
It's that interaction. It's the way of talking. They want because it is a fantasy for some guys, especially if they have been treated harshly at home or as kids. They may have that need to occasionally being treated as
have that role.
Exactly, to have that role. And then, but they cater to that. They have restaurants and bars for that. Like here, we have chicken restaurants where the girls wear lingerie. You know, we have or short kilts like that. What's the name of the restaurant?
Like Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks is one. Tilted kilt is very popular in the West. Or like Hooters used to be on the East Coast. And Hooters used to be a lot more sexy than it is now. Now it's like anyone can be a Hooters girl now, I guess, because it's a shit show. But
haven't been to one in a long time, but
yeah, I go just because I like the chicken.
Right. Yeah, me too.
So how was Brazil for you?
Brazil was an interesting experience. I went there for the first time last September for about a week, maybe 10 days, to Sao Paulo. And I spent the whole trip in Sao Paulo, other than like going, you know, an hour outside the city to somewhere, but no other like major cities. And I really enjoyed it. And I had already been planning to kind of move there sometime in like November or December. I spent about 6 months beforehand working like literally 80 to 90 hours a week, so then I could go move to South America and not work for a while. And I have a Brazilian friend who was living in Sao Paulo, still is living in Sao Paulo. And so I went to visit in September, just kind of like dip my toes in, you know. And then I moved back the first week of November with a plan to stay in Sao Paulo maybe 50% of the time that I would be down in South America. And I planned to stay for 3 to 6 months and stay in Sao Paulo and then travel somewhere else in Brazil on my own, independently backpacking.
Use it as your hub.
Yeah. And so I did that for 5 months or so. Spending time in Sao Paulo. Most of the time in Brazil, my time was in Sao Paulo. I visited a couple other places, but most of Brazil I stayed there. But then also got to experience Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, and Peru. The most challenging thing in Brazil for me was language. I speak Spanish, conversational Spanish, basic to conversational Italian. So I thought, Portuguese will be fine.
No, it isn't.
It's not fine.
It's not that easy.
The thing is, as with most languages, if you have at least a little bit of grasp on that language or a similar one, you can understand a lot more than you can say, right?
Yeah.
So like I could somewhat read Portuguese, like not perfect or anything, but I could figure out a basic menu, things like that, street signs. But, excuse me, even being at dinner with my Brazilian friends, you know, they're generally usually speaking Portuguese, which is fine. And I can understand what everyone is talking about and pretty well understand, especially towards the end of, you know, being there the second time around and really being much more submerged in the culture. But I have nothing to contribute. I couldn't say anything back. I didn't have the vocabulary knowledge to speak back. So I could sit there and like nod and like maybe every now and then throw in like a yes or a no, but so it made connecting with people there challenging if they didn't speak English. And I didn't find it very easy to find people who spoke English, which I don't ever expect when I go.
The percentage there is very low.
It's
very low. Brazilians don't like to study English in school.
I did find more, as far as people my age, I found in Sao Paulo at least that more females spoke English than males. And my friends who live there, they've had the same experience. So I don't know what the reasoning behind that is, but I did experience that quite a bit.
I learned this living in Ukraine. When I find something important to say, I go like, oh, more women speak English than men in every country that I visit so far. Because women get more education, and especially more formal education, apparently everywhere, as far as I could see. In Ukraine, I dealt with English schools. I gave some classes there, and the teachers and the people organizing, all women. It's predominant. So yeah, not surprised that in Brazil as well, more women speak English.
And obviously, the younger generation is going to have higher percentage of people that speak English, just because they're, the education is changing, and they want to learn English because they want to be able to travel to the United States and be successful in business, and a lot of that
and
requires English.
And they have the internet now. Yeah. They buy more American culture.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you like the pizza there?
The pizza?
Yeah.
There's a restaurant specifically in Sao Paulo that might be, it's in my top 5 of Italian food I've ever had, and that's including living in Italy for a year.
I like to ask people that lived in Italy and Brazil, because very often they say, I think the best one was in Sao Paulo.
A very specific restaurant called Famiglia Mancini. Their pasta is like some of the best pasta I've ever had. Like, my mouth is watering right now thinking about it. It's not cheap.
But I think that if you, not just talking about top restaurants, talking about a random restaurant that you are traveling and you stop by, in Brazil the restaurants are very good. And what happens is that the Italian immigration to Brazil is very recent. It's most of it is from the 60s and 70s. Unlike in US, where it's mostly from the 20s and 30s. And of course it's happening every decade, but the curves are a little different. So it's a little more recent in Brazil. And in Brazil they could explore a combination of ingredients that somehow worked out better. And many of my friends that have been to a lot to both countries, they say, oh yeah, easier to find an amazing pizza. And my experience is that the food in Italy is amazing. But I prefer pizza in Brazil. Even in small towns, everywhere. And I went to Napoli, I went to Rome, I went to all these places, and I tried out their pizza, and it was always good, but I thought, but I'm not that impressed, the
pizza is definitely different in Brazil. Like, the sauce flavor, and often even like the cheese texture and flavor is different than what you would get on an Italian pizza in Italy. I don't know. I think for me, I definitely suffer from, like, when I'm traveling as far as food, like missing wherever the place I was before, right? So I'm sure when I was in Brazil, I missed Italian pizza. And when I was in Italy, I'm sure there were days when I was like, missing the churrascarias in Brazil, like, or whatever you're used to from at home in the States. Like, I remember in Sao Paulo just wishing I could find a decent taco. Any place we went to that claimed to have like tacos or Mexican food, I was like, I'll just go to the market and cook at the house.
I am making churrasco here. I built a thing for the churrasqueira. I built one. And I'm doing it once a month or so. I'm going to invite you and your boyfriend for the next one. Where is your boyfriend from?
He is born and raised in Sarasota. But he's half Hungarian, half Peruvian.
Oh, excellent.
His parents both immigrated
there
here.
Will be enough of a cultural shock that he's going to love it or hate it, but there will be a shock.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to.
Yeah, okay, bring him. Okay. Bring him, because that will be cool. I'll invite you for the next one. I'm doing that every month now, and I always invite my friends, but I cannot invite all my friends at the same time, so I'm inviting a few at a time.
Little pockets.
Yeah, and there are always some hashers, because most of my friends in Miami are hashers. So it's cool. It's fun. I love to do it because I love to cook. I love to do it. So the food. When my friends visit Brazil, I give them a list of things to eat, things to drink, and things to see. Let me run the list through you and see if you remember any of it or all of it.
It wasn't that long ago I was there. Hopefully,
I know.
Hopefully they all sound familiar.
Yeah, but you're an old lady and you may not remember anything. Pão de queijo.
Oh, pão de queijo is so good.
Amazing.
My favorite is the pão de queijo stands in the train stations.
Yes.
They're always the best ones. They're so cheap, but they're always the softest.
Exactly.
So good.
Yeah, you can go to any bus stop and bus station that there will be, in the little restaurant on the corner. And, it's amazing. The caipirinha, of course.
Caldo de cana.
Caldo de cana. Caldo de cana is popular here too. You know, it's popular in most of South America. It's not really in most South America and Central America. It's not a very Brazilian thing. It's more like a all Latin world thing.
Okay.
But if you went to the south, you try mate.
Mm-hmm.
I have it there.
I don't love mate.
Yeah.
No, and I saw a lot of that in other parts of
I don't
South
love
America.
it, but I prefer that than tea, and I like because I think it's very healthy. I like to have tea sometimes, but if I can choose between tea and mate, usually I choose mate.
It's so strong.
It's strong, yeah.
It's a lot. And I was in South America in summer. So
yeah, you prefer.
It was already hot and
definitely yes. During
like,
winter,
I'll take a cold beer. I don't want mate.
Yeah, yes. So feijoada.
I like feijoada.
Classic feijoada on a Saturday.
Yeah.
They say that the feijoada is only complete if there is an ambulance outside waiting for you.
we made it twice at the house I was living in Sao Paulo for like big family events with a bunch of Brazilians making it the real way. But they would tend to make two versions. One, like the classic way with all the animal parts. You know, you've got ears and hooves like floating around it. And then they would also make one for the couple of American guests in case we didn't want the one with all of the stuff.
And that one is only sausages and, you know.
Yeah, and that way I like it. And the stuff you put on top.
Farofa.
Farofa. I like cover so much with that.
Yeah, when I do churrasco, I always put a bowl of farofa to dip. And yeah, farofa is awesome. Awesome. So yeah, feijoada, I love them.
And pastels?
Pastel, yeah. Pastel, the pastel in Brazil is a little different than the others. Pastel exists with different names all over Eastern Europe and South America. But they do more pastel with meat, and they make it with palmitos. Heart of palm. Yeah. I love that. It's fantastic. When I fly to Brazil, it's usually the first thing that I get at the airport.
Easy.
At the airport, I go straight to the little cafe and say pastel de palmito, because it's such a rarity to find it outside of Brazil. So even the pão de queijo, you can go to a Brazilian store here and buy it and ready, or just to warm up on the microwave, and it's good.
Right.
But pastel de palmito is difficult to find.
It has to be fresh, just pulled out, handed to you still, like with the dripping on the paper. Yeah,
and it has to be big and full. Like they make it like they don't fuck around. It's heavy.
8 inches.
And they make it heavy with palmito and chicken and cheese inside.
And the little it's almost like a pico that is often on the side. It's just like chopped up tomatoes and vinegar and stuff, and you can put on top.
They call
I forget the name.
Vinaigrette. Yeah, that's the name.
Good.
So, and then I tell people, go to the beach and ask where. And I even give the phrase in Portuguese. I said, ask where people are playing foot volley and watch it. And I'll tell you, Cirque du Soleil is not that interesting. You know, it's foot volley to me is like it should be. It should be popular, or at least admired all over the world, because it's one of the most beautiful things to see. Regular people, they're not professional athletes.
No, but they're so good.
It's Joe and it's the regular people, and they go and play that thing, and it's acrobatic and it's amazing. It's beautiful how good they get at it.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, not in a country where apparently every third person plays football very well, and I use the word football instead of soccer on purpose, just because I'm talking about Brazil. And when I'm talking about America, I say soccer.
Sure, of course.
But when I'm talking about Europe or there, I say football, so I don't create confusion. So I tell people to see that. What else that I don't remember? Oh yeah, and if you go to the south, then you have to go to their dance parties, you know, because they dress different, they do all the gaucho thing, and that is nice. But that's like in Rio Grande do Sul or close to it, or if you go to Argentina and Uruguay, it's a very particular culture. I would say from Patagonia to all the way to Santa Catarina. That area has different food, different culture, different music.
You go a few hours by bus or train or car anywhere in South America, and things are so different. Yeah,
the way they cook, everything is very particular. I like that, and because that's where I went to school, and so I grew up seeing that all the time, and that's how I know how to make churrasco, because I learned by helping doing it for years, you know, and learning how to cut the meat.
I'm gonna be waiting on my invite.
Oh no, definitely. You'll be invited for the next one, and I do here not the way they do it in the Brazilian restaurants here. Right. I do it the way they do at home in Brazil. Right. Great. You know, so it's much more classic and simple. In a way, it's very simple. So yeah, Brazil was interesting, and Italy. Like,
my
tell me about it. Tell me about it.
I moved to Italy when I was 24. So I had my 25th birthday there. So, like I said, I was an au pair, but I think you mentioned, like, when people get au pairs, they at least come from the same agency, or you said something along those lines. I actually didn't go through an agency. I bought myself a one-way ticket and had no idea if anyone would be at the airport when I got there. So I went a kind of different route. I was living in California at the time and was just kind of over California. I'd been in LA for 2 years, which I think is about my max to live in a place like LA. And was just like wanting a change. And a friend of mine had spent, I think maybe like the summer in Italy as an au pair. So through her, she sent a couple emails, and then I talked to a couple families who then sent a couple emails, and through like multiple chains of word of mouth, I ended up connecting with the family that I ended up
So you didn't use an agency at all? You used your friend arranged that? Connect you with people? And did you know any Italian at that time?
No. I was on the airplane. Great. On my way there, I literally like learning how to say I don't speak Italian.
I like to say to people that the best ways to visit a country is if you speak the English very well, or if you don't speak the English, the language, the local language very well, or if you don't speak it at all. Because those are the most fun. You know, if you don't speak it at all, it's really funny, and that's
how I felt in Brazil.
It's amazing. And one of the most difficult things to do is to convince someone that is not used to travel to go to some place without knowing the language, because they are afraid of it. But how do I solve the problem? I said, trust me, you will solve it.
You figure it out.
It will be so much fun. Yeah, because you will improvise and people will understand you.
Well, and language is so much more than just the words we speak, right? You learn that really quickly when you put yourself in that type of situation. Like, I mean, again, I didn't know any Italian when I got to Italy, but I knew that the family that I was going to live with, God willing, they actually exist and pick me up from the airport, because I bought my own flight, a one-way ticket from Tampa, Florida to Torino, Italy. And so I have no idea. Like, I mean, I've Skyped with these people twice.
So you just exchanged emails and you went on the recommendation of a friend. That was
but it was like a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. Like, it was still, you know, it wasn't like we only had one person linking.
There is no real vetting and no checking and no insurance and nothing. So you went real.
My dad actually had a like 2-person deep connection with the father of the family I was going to go move with through LinkedIn, which my dad told me afterward gave him gave him a lot of peace of mind, because they both work in some sort of financing, more or less. And so he's like, all right, well, they're at least real, and 2 people away, you know how LinkedIn works, it's like how many connections deep are they? He's like, they're connected to him, so they're real at least. And apparently they gave my dad a lot of peace of mind.
At 4 connections deep, you are like the entire planet. You know, like it's not much. Two people.
It's not away. Much. But as far as language, like, so I didn't know anything at all, but I knew the family. You know, the kids were 3 and 6 at the time. They were going to a French and English private school, so I knew they already had a little English. They actually weren't learning Italian in school at the time. So that's why the parents, even though they spoke English, they needed to speak Italian with the children, or the children wouldn't be learning Italian. So I knew at least my family would speak some English. And I had a couple other connections because, you know, I'm friends with a lot of people who travel. So they had connected me on Facebook with a couple people my age in Italy that were locals but who spoke some English, who I still keep in touch with now. But the funniest thing with language that happened to me while I was there was that one of my duties with the family was that I was supposed to drive the kids to and from school. As an au pair, you're not like a maid and you don't cook. Your main purpose is really teaching the kids English because it's an exchange. When I was there, I was getting paid 110 euros a week. So your work is very like kid focused. But one of my duties that we agreed upon was I would drive the kids to and from school. At the time, I didn't know yet how to drive a stick shift car, manual car. And my host mother, she was like, "Don't worry, you know, I can teach you how to drive." It was a minivan stick shift. "I'll teach you, no big deal." And I'm like, I'm smart. Like, I'm sure I can learn. Like, it can't be that hard. And I get there and she tried to teach me in their driveway, which sounds like it would be the safest option, but they lived on private property up a very steep hill. And so I was learning on like a curvy, steep road with a woman who spoke English, but clearly not her first language. And I know no Italian, and the minivan was huge. It was all very stressful. So she decides she's just going to put me in driving school. So she sends me to driving school. It's once a week for a month. The first day you like literally drive on like a simulator, like you're at a video game arcade or something. My teacher spoke very little English, and I had only been there a couple weeks. Second time I go to class, we get in the car. He drives us out of the parking lot, but then has me drive, you know, simple roads. We're in Torino. It's a pretty decently sized city. He tries to avoid like traffic. I'm not like making crazy turns or dealing with the hills, just like parking and driving and restarting, you know, starting the car and getting up to like third gear. It was fine. A little stressful. Language wasn't great, but like it was okay. My third lesson, he has me drive from the beginning. The parking lot, I mean, as I'm sure you know, the cars are like almost touching. Everyone drives very close, especially in the city. And so he tells me just to start the car and pull out of the parking lot, pull out and go left. At least I think is what he's telling me, because he's mostly using hand gestures because the communication is... And he's on the phone, like chatting with a buddy. I don't know about like what he's going to do Friday night or something. Like it's not like an emergency. Like I don't know why you're on the phone right now. So I'm waiting at the end of the parking lot to turn left, meaning cross over traffic. There's not a light, so I need to do it quickly. And it's a pretty decently steep hill, the parking lot is. And another car comes up and is like right on my ass. And I'm like...
Oh, everything has to go right now.
Yeah, you know when you're learning to drive stick, being on any sort of hill, it was very terrifying. And I'm on a pretty steep hill with someone on my butt. My teacher on his cell phone just like chatting away, and the traffic I have to cross to go left is coming off of a bridge, so I can't see the oncoming traffic very well. And I'm like panicking, and he's telling me, "Go turn right," and then like pointing to the left. Or the opposite, turn left and pointing to the right. And then he kept saying like, "Put your finger on the something." Like he's trying to speak in English, but he's not using the right words. He's like, clearly now I'm like, am I supposed to turn right or am I supposed to turn left? Like we need to just stick to hand gestures because none of this is working. And I just broke down and started bawling in the driver car, like hysterical. You would have thought I was like a drunk 19-year-old whose boyfriend just broke up with her, like losing my mind, crying. So I was so stressed and like I couldn't communicate with him, and it was terrible. Other than that, language went okay. But that moment I'm positive like I will never forget. And now I drive a stick shift just fine. I learned the week I moved back to America from Italy, I learned to drive. I spent the whole year there not driving. Because my host mom was like, we'll just have you not drive the kids to school. I think the teacher called her and was like, "You should not have this girl driving the kids."
It's not working out.
So meant I got to work a little less.
Oh my.
But that was like, yeah, it was like, you know, when you've been somewhere a few weeks, so you're at that weird level of still excited to be there, but also homesick. And like, oh my God, I don't speak this language. I don't have any friends I can talk to about it because nobody, you know... If they somewhat speak your language or you somewhat speak theirs, it's fine and you can talk about basic things, but to have like a real conversation is really challenging. So it was like already just missing that, and then the student driver situation. It was...
I don't remember doing anything too bad driving.
If it wouldn't have been a stick shift.
But I remember doing things very ridiculous at the gas station. Like the first day with the motorcycle. I got to Europe and I had to wait for 11 days for the motorcycle to clear customs and all that. And so I went to pick it up in a little town in Netherlands. Maryville, something like that. So I got the motorcycle. But when you ship it, you have to ship it with, they say with empty tank. It's not empty. There will be a little bit.
Little.
The rule is less than 10%, but they say empty. So I had very little gas in the tank. So when I got it out of the company that delivers and just let the bike warm up a little bit, ran out of gas already. So, and it was 6:30, so they closed. So now I had the bike with all my luggage on top of it and no gas. So I thought, what do I do now? And I don't speak, and over there in that city, they speak mostly Flemish. Not even Dutch, which wouldn't help much because I don't understand Dutch. So I thought, what do I do now? So I saw someone in the house that I was parked in front of, and I couldn't explain to them. They didn't speak English. I couldn't explain to them what was the situation. I just pointed at the bike and walked away. And they understood. I guess they understood. Well, now it's my bike.
Right.
I don't know.
You opened the gas tank?
I don't know.
That?
I pointed the gas tank and I walked away. And I went to the gas station. And they didn't have jugs to sell. But next to it, there was a car dealer. And I went, and they were closing it. They were closing the shop and all that. But I got there to the door and I talked to a guy and he understood me more or less and said, I need a jerry can to carry fuel to my motorcycle. He got it. And he said, all right. He went there and got a jerry can. Here it is. And he proceeded to close the shop. I said, how do I give it back to you? He said, just leave it here later. All right. So I went to the gas station. I gave them, I was not even trying to talk to them. I just showed the jerry can, gave them
that's
€1.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, I gave them €1 and I walked to the pump and I put the gas. All right, I went there and put it on the motorcycle. Right. Then I rode to the gas station. So I put the motorcycle in front of the pump and I went back and I gave, I think it was €20, something like that. And I said gas on the motorcycle. And the lady was like, no. Then I said, no, I want gas in the motorcycle. She said, no, you can't. She was, no. And I kept saying that. And she said, no. She was like saying, are you crazy? It took me a while to remember that they don't say gas, they say petrol. Over there, gas is when you want gas. It's natural gas, and that's a different pump, and that's not for motorcycles, right? So, but it took a while, and I was thinking, this lady doesn't want to sell it to me, for whatever reason. I couldn't imagine why, and she couldn't understand why this crazy foreigner wants to put gas on a motorcycle. It's going to explode this thing here. So there was one, and another is that. In most of here, usually we put the card.
Yeah, you can do it without interacting.
Exactly, without interacting at all. We put the card, authorizes, and you put the gas on. With few exceptions, like New Jersey, where they have to have an attendant. But in Europe, in most of Europe, you fill it up and then you go pay. Or in some places, you have to go and pay first. And then you fill it up. But if the pay first thing is difficult because you don't know exactly how much you want, and then to make the change may be complicated, and you end up trying to guess. So it's always difficult. But then there are countries in which you have to sit down. They put a chair, like in Ukraine, they put a chair in front of this little window, and the window is always like this high. So they put a chair in front of it. You sit on the chair. And you have to explain how much you want. to that point is easy because I always pick, okay, I have here a 10 euro, you know, or in Ukraine, whatever is the local currency. And then, so the amount is easy to understand. But then they ask what kind of gas, because in their computer you have to say which kind of gas you want. And that is difficult to tell. Because every country is a little bit different. And even understanding which one, here we have 3 kinds of gasoline, right. And then there is diesel. Over there they have like 8 kinds of gasoline, so some with weird names that you don't understand. What is the fuck is gas oil? I had to Google to figure out what it is. And so you don't understand that. Then you need to say exactly the one, otherwise they're not going to give you right. So the gas stations were complicated. So I started writing it down. I would bring always paper, and I would write the kind I want, and then the amount, and I would give them the paper and the amount. That worked. But on my first trip, I had a T-shirt that I made here. There are these shops that make custom shirts. You bring them the file, and they make the shirt with you. So it had all the icons for food, drink, beer, hotel, you know, road, motorcycle, mechanic. You know, how those words. And then in the back, I wrote the phrase, "I am American, visiting Europe, riding my motorcycle. I love beer, and I want to have a great time." And then I had it translated to 8 different languages. So that was in the back. And several times I was like in the online for the groceries or anything, and people would see that, they would tap me on the shoulder, start talking to me in their language, you know, and I made a friend several times that way.
That's really cool.
That way. So I suggest to people, have the icons in the front, because you can just point. Oh, you need a burger. You know,
right.
Get it. They will understand.
Beer, burger, gas.
Food, yeah.
Beer, burger.
Yeah, I had like, mechanic, police, hotel, hospital. Yeah, I had that one.
Taxi?
No, I had my motorcycle.
That's true.
But I figured out the one for mechanic. It was the wrench.
Like a wrench, yeah.
A little wrench. Yeah, I remember it was 8 icons. I don't remember the others. But the phrase is in the back, and then I would show a point, you know, and they would find their language. Oh, nice! And then they invite you, and then they bring you a beer, and they make a friend.
That's
already.
Really cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Another way was when I was riding. Every time I saw someone in trouble along the way, bikers usually.
Sure.
I would stop and try to help. And I had a card. Like a business card that I made with my information, my contact information, and in the back the same phrases, you know. So I would give the card, and I would try to help. And I even once I met a guy I was in France, and there was a biker from Greece, and he needed a tool, but it was going to take a long time to fix, because he had to remove the tire, fix it, put it back. It was a big bike. And now he needed was this tool to tighten it up again. So I wrote him my phone number. I was already on the card, and I wrote him the name of the place where I was going to be, the name of the hostel, and I left the tool, and I said later, bring me the tool back, you know. And I went. I left the stuff with him. Yeah, and then a few hours later he showed up, and then he bought me dinner. You know, so he brought back the tool. It's super cool when you trust people without any reason. Take the chance, trust them, because first of all, I don't think it ever happened to me that someone would not bring back or return something that I offer.
Right.
Because I never gave stuff that people ask for. Like if people ask for money to help with a ticket or something like that, I never do it. But if I see someone in need and I offer the help,
right.
I think it never happened that they would not return it or not, you know, or not send it back to me or things like that. And usually I made a friend. I mean, that way.
People think traveling is so scary and you're going to get robbed and you're going to get kidnapped. But I find quite the opposite in my travels. Like, most people are good people, right? Most people
everywhere
are good people. Not all people,
yeah,
but most people. And especially when you're traveling and, you know, there's a association with the word hostel, that they're going to be kidnapped, like the Hostel movie or whatever.
Thanks to movies, yeah.
I've stayed, and I've traveled as a young female alone, a lot. And I've stayed in hostels almost all the time. I've never done couch surfing, but I've gone to a lot of like meetups from couch surfing or hangouts, but I've never actually surfed. I've hosted in Brazil. We hosted some couch surfers, but I've never had a bad experience at a hostel as far as anything being scary. Like, I've never had something bad happen. I've never had anything stolen. Knock on wood. Somehow I've never been pickpocketed. I mean, you take some certain precautions, right? If you're going to go out to go drink for the night, you don't take all your money. You don't
bring your
original passport
if you don't need it. Yeah,
right. Or like when I was in Rio specifically, I was told to be very conscious of my phone. Like, literally, if you need to use your phone for the GPS, like, step inside to a bar or restaurant, sit down at a table and use it. Don't use it out on the street. Like, you will likely have it stolen from you. I met people who did get theirs stolen, but they were being drunk or
careless.
Yeah, being careless. And
you said an important thing just before, that you said that most people are cool, and that most actually means upwards of 99%. It's really close to 100% of the people are honest, hardworking, really cool people, and they are helpful.
Yeah, they just want to meet people and experience.
But also, I have a theory that the people that get in trouble or victimized during trips are also less than 1%. Because I have many female friends that travel all over the place, never had a trouble, and only one or two had all the trouble. You know, so I think that, and like, one of them had a lot of trouble. Like, she got into all kind of bad situations traveling, and so I think that it's also that the people that get in trouble tend to be the same ones that get most of the trouble. You know, so that is something wrong with them as well. Being careless or not following the right advice, or trying or not having their detectors of trouble on. You know, so
you have to be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, they just like oblivious, and which in her case, I think she's oblivious. She doesn't understand where the layers of increasing layers of danger are. She doesn't see them. She just goes through, and then gets into all kind of bad situations. And not just and it's not just that she got in bad situations in places like Brazil. No, she got in bad situations in places like Miami, or in places like you know, like Los Angeles.
It's not like she was in a favela.
She gets in trouble anywhere. You know, she doesn't need to be in a favela to get in trouble. While if you are an experienced, smart traveler, you can go anywhere. You can go to the favela, you can go to Johannesburg, but you are going to be careful, and you're going to be reading the signs and the advice of your hosts.
Exactly, and, listening to locals' advice. If they say don't go to such and such neighborhood, then don't go to that neighborhood. I mean, there were pockets of Rio, I was told, because when I was in Rio, I was traveling with an American female friend of mine. She was actually living in Brazil while I was as well, and so we went to Rio together, and people told us, don't go to this specific area, like there's lots of favelas there, or like the bad favela, like the worst favelas, or in this area, don't have your phone out, try to stay in one of these couple of neighborhoods. And we listened to all of that. We still went out every night until late. It's not like we just stayed in our hostel and didn't experience anything. We went to local places. We went and did the tourist places. We did a good mix, we have no problem. And
you have the information of the places and times that you should avoid. And also, I don't know if they told you that in Brazil, that when in trouble, if everything fails and the bullets start to fly, run into a taxi. Because in Brazil, the taxi is the last line of defense. It's very interesting how that developed over the decades, because the taxi drivers became very aware that their livelihood depends on them being trustworthy, and they go through extreme lengths to protect each other and to protect their customer. So they may They may overcharge you. They may do, you know, they may sell you a ride to the airport for 3 times the price.
As a tourist
but they will not get you killed. That for sure. You know, they will bring you somewhere alive because if their reputation is all they have. You know, and now at the times of Uber and Lyft, apparently that is not being enough anymore. They're going out of business there.
Right. I mean, so, Uber is very prevalent in Brazil. Yeah. It was not legal in Argentina. So, like, I did take an Uber once in Argentina because you can still use the app and they still exist. And I was able to use it and pay with my card through the app. And I didn't know yet that Uber, I had only been in Buenos Aires like 2 days or something. And I was out with a local and then I was tired and she was staying out. So I took an Uber to go back to my hostel. And I started to get in the back, and he's like, no, telling me to sit in the front seat. Which, okay, it was weird for me, but I spoke with him in Spanish, and he was just saying, like, no, you ride in the front. Okay. And I find out the next day it's because it's not legal.
Yeah.
So when you're just hopping in the back seat of a car, it's suspicious looking. To taxis or police or whatever. So you have to ride in the front, and then like had I been a local person that didn't have an American bank account linked to my card, I would have had to pay with cash, so that there wouldn't be tracked like Argentinian money going.
Exactly, and Uber. Also in some countries, I heard of Uber drivers being attacked by taxi drivers, being blocked or attacked, or their cars vandalized. If they see them, anyone driving with someone on the back, they presume, oh, that's Uber, and they vandalize the car or even get violent. So, and then there are countries like in Ukraine, it's very common to use Uber. But before Uber, it's pretty much the same drivers that are doing Uber, they are doing Uklon. And that's the service that is like a taxi service. And it was like a taxi service before with an app and all that. And their app is really good. Their app, like in many languages, and you can filter by a driver that speaks whatever language. And usually they don't, but at least they scratch. And then the app is super cool, and you choose, and it tells you how much it's going to cost. Even if you're taking a taxi, may show up because the taxi driver may be on Ukulon as well.
Right.
So it may be a taxi or maybe a private car.
Right.
But you can, if it is a busy time or if you want someone in a certain language, you can advance a tip. You can say, I'm going to pay 20 hryvnia extra, it's like a dollar, you know, or you say 40.
If you can speak.
You can put like $2, $3, $4 on top of it. And then someone exactly the way you want will show up. You can even say, I want this kind of car, or, you know, with this language and all that, and I don't mind waiting a little more. And someone will show up, and then you know exactly how much the ride is and how much the tip is. And when the person shows up, you give them the money. Then that's it.
Cool. I've never heard of that.
Super nice. And then they pay, and because you confirm, then Uklon charges them later, like a little bit. So, and then there is Uber. Uber there works fine.
Interesting. So that's a super smart way for that app to function.
Yeah.
To be able to have those like filters, essentially. Yeah.
The first time I went there, the app was not that great, but in 2016, it was already really good. And Kiev is about, I would say, going end to end. It's not bigger than Miami. Miami, not the metropolitan area, just Miami.
Right.
Miami ends at west of the airport. Okay, so Doral is already not Miami. So Kiev is about that size. You can go from one end of the city to the other end of the city for like $6 or so. It's very cheap, and that's an Uber.
I tried to go.
Uklon, $4 to go across the entire city. So, and the metro closes at midnight. So even if you go somewhere and you stay late and the metro is not working anymore, you can just call Uklon and take a car. Or people do, like the first time I took it, a friend actually, she called on her phone because my phone was not working. She called on her phone and paid for it, and because I think that if you have a bank there, you can already pay. Something like that. so she paid for it and put me in the car and sent me home, and you know, worked perfectly.
Oh, that's so cheap.
Yeah.
I tried to get an Uber yesterday to go from 16th Street on Miami Beach to 56. So 40 blocks.
Yeah.
It's like 3 miles. $12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, really? I could run there as fast as we're going to get there in the car anyways.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah, transport here is well, depending on the city, it's very expensive. Miami is relatively cheap. Uber here is cheap because there are too many drivers. But try to take an Uber. I took an Uber in Alexandria, Virginia, when I went to get my motorcycle. It was like $40 to go. I would say it was a distance like from here to Pinecrest. Okay, which is on Uber here like $15.
Right.
Over there it was like
Three
$40. Yeah, 3 times as much.
That's crazy.
I guess demand. But then, so Italy, Brazil, and you have been where else?
Spain, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Peru, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Jamaica, Belgium, France, a couple other places in Europe. I'm drawing a blank.
So Italy, you made it happen the way you explain, and you describe how you make it work with Brazil. But all these other places, how did you make it happen? In the sense that, how did you pay for it, and how did you make it happen?
So all of the places down in South America, which is where I went this year, when I went to Brazil was my first time in South America.
Okay.
So I stayed down in South America for that length of time, and traveled within the countries there. I didn't, like, I worked for 6-8 months, like literally 80 to 90 hours a week, working full time in my trade job, which is physical therapy. Then I have a business that works through direct selling with a skincare company. And then I also worked at a restaurant, like 4 to 6 shifts a week. And every night driving home from the restaurant, I would drive through the ATM and deposit that money. So I didn't even touch it the whole time. So that when it came time for me to go to Brazil, I was able to not worry about working. I was prepared for like 5 to 6 months, I estimated, before I would need to come back to the States and work here or find a means of staying down there if I wanted to continue being down there. The other trips were all like a 10-day or 2-week trip. You know, you put in your request for vacation from work, you go for 2 weeks, you come back, you have your regular life. But with South America, I sold my car, I gave away my pet, I ended my lease, I got rid of everything I own except for like 2 Tupperwares, like the big ones that slide under a bed, you know, and like a couple boxes. And then the stuff I took with me to Brazil, which was 1 suitcase and 1 backpack. So that was more like a move than it was a trip, you know. I didn't have an apartment to come back to when I came back to the States. I mean, I had plenty of friends I could stay with, but I mean, I ended my car, ended my home, all of that. So it was a very different trip. That one and Italy were both like that. The other trips were just, you know, you save up money and then you go on a vacation and then you come back and you go back to your job. Like, I had to quit my job and everything.
Did you have recurring dreams?
No.
Since I traveled since 2012, that I spent like the entire summer in Europe, and then 2014 the entire summer, then 15 to 16 I spent 18 months non-stop there, and every year there I have recurring dreams that I'm in another country, someplace far, and I don't have money to go back, and I am in a tight spot, like I don't have work, and I don't have savings, and I don't have a ticket.
That sounds very stressful.
Yeah, and I'm stressed as fuck in the dream. And it's always the same dream, it only varies the place.
Interesting.
You know, different places, but I'm always like, oh my God, and then that, you know, my stuff is back home in America, and I can't go back. It's like I left the last regular job, by regular I mean 9-to-5 job that I had was in 2002, and so since then I have either been being freelance or running my own businesses or unemployable. So since then, I would say for the first 10 years or so, I had recurring dreams that I was in the dream. No, I was always back. I was always in a building that is an office building, like the building is always different, but it's always this sophisticated, beautiful office building. And either I was hired by a company there, or I was going for a job interview. That job interview was always with the same manager that I had when I was working in Boston. It was the same guy. And some of the same coworkers are always in the dream, like one day I have to tell him, man, I saw you in dreams more than anybody else in my life. Like, I saw you in dreams more than I saw my parents in dreams. So I'm always going there either to have an interview with him or because I was hired. And in the dream, it's always the same thing. I cannot find my office, or I cannot find them. I'm walking around and going to different floors and going to the labyrinth of offices, and I can't find my own office. And I feel miserable because it's so embarrassing that you cannot even find your own department, that I would just keep walking, looking like I'm busy, and feeling miserable that how incompetent. It's called imposter syndrome, right? When you are in a job that you are in doubt if you're actually qualified for your own job. Happens a lot in high-tech companies. So I am having imposter syndrome in the dream, and thinking how incompetent I am. I cannot even find my office. I cannot find my desk. and it took around 10 years for that dream to disappear.
Interesting.
Yeah. And now I still have occasionally that dream in which I am in Europe or some other country. It's always a place where I have been, like the place feels familiar in the dream, but I am destitute. I don't have a ticket, don't have money, don't have any work, and then I'm really concerned. So I ask people that traveled a lot if they have that kind of, or maybe I'm just a freak.
No, but no, I don't. But I think that's really interesting. It sounds very stressful. And I have very stressful dreams, but they not usually have anything to do with like travel or things that make sense like that. So.
Yeah, they're very linear. I started doing lucid dreaming. I learned to do it because I wanted to visit those dreams and correct them. I suspect, I cannot be sure, but I suspect that that's what happened with the first dream, with the unemployment one. Because in one of the dreams, I became lucid in the dream, and then I knew that I was dreaming. So, okay, so let's talk to Matthew, the manager. I need to talk to him now. And in a dream, if you decide that you want to meet someone, you can decide that person's in the next room. And then when you open the door, they are there. You can choose anyone, anyone that you know, that they are going to be behind the door. Right. And then you open the door and there they are. And then I talked to him and I said, I'm okay. I don't need to work for you anymore. I don't need this job anymore. I'm fine. I have a new career and I really don't need it. And he said, okay then. All right then. You don't need to come back. And I think that's when that dream stopped.
Interesting.
I can't be sure because I can't or maybe it stopped gradually, something like that.
But there was a change there.
There was the change, but I still, it's not very frequently that I get a lucid dream, so it couldn't work out the travel one yet. But you need to, my theory is that you need to inform your subconscious that you are okay now, that you're planning your trips better. And there are, as far as I know, there are two ways of doing it. One is by a lot of self-suggestion. The other is through a ritual. You create a ritual that tells your subconscious that something is the truth now, that something has been changed. Or you go to the lucid dream and talk directly to your, because when everybody's projections of your own subconscious, so you're talking directly to your subconscious, and you are informing, okay, I'm fine now, I am planning my trips well, or whatever it is, I don't need to, or like, I'm not going to school without my shoes anymore,
Right.
I solved that problem, you need to tell whatever it is, and apparently it works.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look into that more. I guess I do have recurring dreams. They're just not travel related. They're related to some trauma from when I was in my late teen years and early 20s. And they're terrible. So maybe I need to, adapt that mindset.
All right. Well, I feel like making lunch now. So I want to thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Probably later, as soon as we turn the cameras off, we are going to think, oh shit, we should have talked about this, And
Well,
then we
I'll see you at the
didn't.
churrascaria. So.
Yeah, but then after we do the churrasco, like days later, then we'll do another podcast or something like that.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you did. Very happy that you decided to share your story, because it inspires other people and things like that.
Of course.
And
People need to know that it's possible. I think people don't, with travel specifically, with things in general, but with travel, I have people say all the time to me, people of any age, any gender, like, oh, you're so lucky, or it must be nice, or I wish I could. It's not luck.
Or they presume that you have a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm not a trust fund, baby. Like, I worked 90 hours a week for 6 months to move to Brazil for a few months.
Yeah.
Like, it's possible, as with most things. I don't like when people say anything is possible, because I don't really believe that anything is possible. But most things are possible if you're willing to put in the work and learn about it and figure out the way to do it. So it's a phrase I hate when people say, like, oh, it must be nice, or you're so lucky. No.
You're so lucky. Yeah,
you're so lucky that you're so lucky you got to do that.
Yeah.
No, it's not luck that I worked 3 jobs.
But I don't. A long time ago, I decided to. When people say, "Oh, you're lucky," I always reply, and I'm not afraid of being rude when I say that. I always reply, "It's not luck; it's skill."
Hard work.
It's skill. Nothing that I do that worked was because I was lucky.
Right.
Even when it was. But
luck has a factor in
may
life,
help, but it required skill, because they are not going to come back right after something that didn't work and say, "Oh, you were unlucky." No, it was not luck. It failed. Some ideas just don't work.
Right.
A lot of things that you do don't work, so you have to be all right with that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
We hope you like this podcast as much as we like to produce it. This has been made possible by the efforts of dozens of volunteers, supporters, partners, and visionaries that are helping us build Voyager's World. Please visit our website,